And I'm live. Hello. Allison Verhalen here, coming at you live for today's Tip Tuesday. This video will have some tips, but mostly I just want to say how awesome the Seattle Interactive Conference was. That's where I was last week. I had to fly all the way to Seattle from Chicago so I could be a speaker there because I pitched them a month or two ago, and they accepted my pitch, and I got to fly over to Seattle and talk all about the importance of storytelling in blogging, as well as how to incorporate stories into your blog to make them really engaging and keep people reading or listening if it's an audio or a video like this, right? The tips I provided do not apply only to blogging. I just said that because I'm a blogger and that's primarily what I do. So that was really exciting to get up on stage in front of probably 100 to 200 people, somewhere in there. It was pretty packed. Had a mic, had bright lights in my face, had the whole 9 yards. It was so exciting. So loved getting that chance, but also loved just being at the conference and seeing what other people had to say. It was a 2-day conference and my presentation was on the first day. So on the second day, I was like, oh, good. I can just sit back, relax, watch everyone else's presentation. The pressure was off. It was so much more fun. The first day was still fun, but the second day was more relaxing for me, at least. So I wish that I had a chance to see every single presentation that was there. That's not true. There were probably one or two that was like, yeah, that's not really relevant to me and what I do. But I wanted to see the vast majority of the presentations, but they had 2 presentations going at a time. And since I have not yet learned how to be in 2 places at once, I could not see everything, unfortunately. But from what I did see, I can give you kind of the rundown of some of the highlights, some of the best presentations that I saw, and some of the biggest takeaways that I had from this conference. So first up is your headlines. So I have talked ad nauseum, and I will continue to talk about how important your headlines are. Because if you show up, let's say you show up on a Google search, or someone sees your post on, LinkedIn or whatever your preferred social media platform is, if your headline is not super on point, it's not going to compel them to click through. And they always keep in mind how competitive this landscape is of content marketing, right? In this digital age in which we are living, you have literally billions of probably trillions. Yeah. I mean, there's like 4 million blog posts being published every day. Every day we have millions of new content going up. And again, it's blog posts. That's just blog posts, right? That's not even including videos and on YouTube and on TikTok and everywhere, and LinkedIn articles and LinkedIn newsletters and Facebook posts that sometimes get really long, right? It's everywhere. So you have to give people a reason to click through to your website. And that's the headline. If the headline does not give them a reason to click through, none of the rest of your content matters, because they're not even going to see it. So your headline has to be on point. So one of the best presentations I saw was by Brianne Dromey of OneNet Inc. Awesome presentation about creating headlines. She recommended going through 50 different iterations of every single headline you create. So basically, for this, you can tell I did not do it with this video, for example, right? I just said highlights from the Seattle Interactive Conference. It's very straightforward. It's what it is. I did not go through 50 different iterations of ways to say that. But according to Brianne Dromey, I absolutely should. She did say yes, 50 different headlines every single time. She said the sweet spot is really between 30 to 50. So yeah, that's where a lot of the best ideas come from, is between that 30 to 50 mark. She did say when asked about it in the Q&A session, if you're pressed for time and if it comes down to either doing all 50 or making your deadline, then yeah, go ahead and keep it to like 30, but still do as many as you can, right, without missing your deadline. And she has also admitted that for some of the subheadings that she puts in her content, she won't always go through the different, 50 iterations. She might do 30. That makes sense, right? That top headline is the most important for any piece of content, but especially it's a really important landing page on your website, or the tagline of your business. The example she took us through was a tagline for a company's business, right? That's super important because everyone is going to see that. Everyone who looks at that either on your website or on social media and goes, what is that? What does that mean? What does this company do? Why should I care? Super, super important to get that right. So yes, you absolutely want to go through 50 different iterations. So she gave us some tips and some tools that we could use. The tools that she provided were Power Thesaurus, Phrase Thesaurus, and Word Hippo, which is interesting because I had not heard of those first two. I don't think I had heard of Word Hippo, had not used it, but the Power Thesaurus and Phrase Thesaurus are always really good. Phrase Thesaurus is where if you have a phrase you want to use, but you don't, it's not, the wording is not quite what you want to use, you can use Phrase Thesaurus to come up with similar phrases that mean the same thing, just a different wording. So that's a really cool tool that I'm sure I will be using. She also pointed out that each headline can have one or more elements as its focus: attitude, differentiation, benefits, or features. If you know me at all, you know I'm always about focusing on the benefits. You can focus on features occasionally if it's like a new product or service launch and you really want to talk about how awesome it is and why it's so awesome and all that different stuff. Then yeah, okay, go ahead and talk up your features. But I always focus on benefits and differentiation, because people always want to know why they should work with you over someone else, or why they should read your blog post over something else, right? So over all the different things they could be doing. So differentiation and benefits are key. So the 4 steps that she took us through to get you to those 50 different headlines are imitating the voice of the customer, which means you need to gather a lot of data, take surveys, interview your customers, learn what words they use and phrases they use to describe your product or service, and incorporate that kind of language into your headlines. Wordplay, picture play, and table mergers. This is where you come up with, you look at those different elements that your headline can have: the attitude, differentiation, benefits, or features, and you can kind of mix and match. So you don't always need just one focus. It can have a couple different focuses depending on what you're doing. That was an awesome presentation. Loved it. One of the other great presentations I saw was by Kavi Cardos, who is director of SEO for the Corporate Finance Institute, but cut her teeth over at Moz. If you're not familiar with Moz, that's a very big, very influential SEO company. She worked for them before they got bought out. So that is a great place to learn the ropes of SEO. Her presentation was all about crafting content for websites rather than humans, which I'm totally on board with. Obviously, Kavi and I were so in sync on this, because I did give, before the helpful content update, I had given a presentation that was all about writing for websites versus writing for Google versus writing for humans, right? So obviously you want to do both. You have to write for humans. You have to make Google happy. But at the end of the day, Google is a means to an end. It is not the end game in and of itself. If you show up on the first page of Google and people get to your website and they don't like the content and doesn't give them a reason to take that next step in the buyer journey, they're not going to do it, right? So you can have those bragging rights that you're on the first page of Google. You can have lots of traffic, but you won't get the money at the end, right? You're not going to get more people in your funnel. You're not going to get more sales. You're not going to get those things that drive business. So when it comes down to, creating content for Google rather than humans, always put humans first. And Google wants content that is aimed towards humans. But Kavi brought up a really great point about Google's helpful content update that I had not thought about. But once you went through it, I was like, I should have noticed this, because Google gave us a big heads up that this core algorithm update was coming. They never give us a heads up. They normally give us a heads up like day of, like maybe a day in advance, usually more like an hour in advance. And usually it's more like, oh, by the way, we're rolling out this core algorithm update now. So the fact that Google gave us I think it was actually like weeks worth of notice. It was at least a few days worth of notice. They were like, hey, we're going to release this update. It's called the helpful content update. Here's what you need to know, right? they never do that. And so the fact that they did that was very unusual. And the fact that it had a very descriptive name of the helpful content update, it told you what they were going for, or what they think, or what they want you to think they're going for, is what Kavi's point was. Because again, Google never gives it that name. It's just like, here's, the core algorithm update for this month of this year, right? That's usually all it is. So it was very unusual, because Google never does this. And then to make it even more unusual, as I reported a while ago, at the end, Google said they rolled it out. It took about 2 weeks. At the end of it all, Google was like, okay, we're done. And everyone looked at their SERPs and their traffic, and nothing happened. Normally during a core algorithm update, it's tons of volatility. People's SERPs and their traffic is up and down, and it's all over the place. And that really didn't happen with the helpful content update. People's traffic stayed pretty much the same, and their ranking stayed pretty much the same. And Google was like, yeah, well, I mean, that's because we've always really prioritized high quality content, and people create good quality content. So that's about it. And so Kavi's theory is that it was just a giant PR stunt on Google's behalf, because Google wants us to think that Google is prioritizing helpful content. So it orchestrated this core algorithm update that may or may not actually have existed. So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing that I loved about her presentation, she is from Texas. So she referenced the story of a grocery store based in Texas that gave away free food during the pandemic. And she listed some of the prominent news outlets that covered this, because that's an interesting story. There's a grocery store giving away free groceries during this huge crisis that our country is going through, right? That's pretty awesome. So of course people want to cover that. So some of the major news outlets covered it. Those news outlets have websites, and anytime someone cites something like that on their website in their news organization, they're going to provide a link back to that sources, or in this case, the grocery store's website. So, and those news organizations, especially the bigger they are, have huge domain authority. They have tons of content. They get lots of traffic. Google loves those websites. So if those websites are providing a link back to your website, that is awesome for your SEO. Google is going to love that. And Kavi pointed out how much this grocery store's, their website, how much their traffic just skyrocketed after this story was released. And it was an exponential growth in organic traffic, from people clicking on the link from those stories, as well as organic searches. So super, super beneficial. She called it an SEO strategy disguised as a PR campaign. And I love that idea. And as a funny side note, it turns out that Kavi and I have very similar backgrounds as to how we got into SEO. If you know anything about me, I actually majored in English and psychology, which I always say is the perfect degree for content marketing. Had no idea what content marketing was, had no clue this was an option, ended up thought I wanted to work in publishing by the time I graduated. Except I graduated in 2009, right after the job market crashed. So there were no jobs to be had in publishing or really anywhere else. So, a few years later, ended up writing some blog posts, and that led me down the SEO rabbit hole. And here we are. Kavi actually majored in publishing, also thought she was going to work in publishing, also graduated in 2009, could not find a job in publishing, and ended up working in SEO instead. So that was really funny, because I was going through my history in my presentation, and she was sitting there going, what? That's my story. So that was just a really funny story. Next, think outside the box for your marketing campaign. This was a presentation by Rebecca Coleman of the Narrative Group. And she's worked with some major brands like McDonald's and Illumination, helping them promote various things for their businesses. And it was so inspiring. So she does a lot of advertising, marketing, social media marketing, billboards, influencer marketing, lots of things that I don't do. But what I loved about her presentation were a couple things. First of all, was how much market research went into her marketing campaigns. She, in one instance, she talked about dividing the fan base up into 3 different subgroups and creating content to target each of those subgroups. which I thought was just brilliant. And I love that idea. The other one was the benefit of taking a risk in your marketing and how well that can pay off, how beneficial that can be for your business. The example she gave of a campaign she did for McDonald's, they had actually pitched that idea to McDonald's like 2 years prior to implementing it, and McDonald's rejected it. They didn't think it was going to work. They thought it was too risky. Then the pandemic hit, and McDonald's was desperate to get people into their restaurants. So they were like, yeah, do whatever you got to do. We just need people to come in. So they launched their campaign, and it was a huge success. And McDonald's made back their investment on that campaign 3 times over. So think outside the box, know your target audience really, really well. Breadth as well as depth when it comes to market research. And don't be afraid to take a risk. Loved that talk. I do want to talk briefly about the elephant in the room, which is artificial intelligence. I know that, again, if you followed me for any length of time, you probably know that I have played around with some AI writing tools. I've been hearing for a while that AI is coming for my job, and it's going to replace writers. And I just don't see that happening in the near future. I mean, maybe eventually, but when you get into storytelling, it's all about the human experience and human connections. And I don't see robots being able to mimic that. So that said, there were a number of presentations on AI at this conference, and I do want to know more about it. So I did attend the ones that I could. There was one on AI that I really wanted to attend. It was at the same time as my presentation. And since I have not yet learned how to be in 2 places at once, could not attend that, unfortunately. So, but I did attend a couple other presentations on AI. Again, nothing about it really impressed me. Nothing had me quaking in my boots going, oh gosh, my career is over. Mostly I was just really not impressed with the men who presented on AI. And again, there were some presentations that, were by men that I missed. I couldn't make it to, that I heard were really awesome. So I just know that the ones that I saw were really unimpressive, unorganized. The men didn't seem to know where they were or what they were doing or what they were talking about in their presentation. It was really disappointing. One of them even said, like in the middle of his presentation, just said, "Is this even interesting? I don't know." And then kept going. And it was so bizarre just because it showed not only a lack of organization, because you should know before you pitch a presentation whether or not it's going to be interesting. And if you get in the middle of a presentation and you're not sure if it's interesting, you should be engaging with your audience enough to know if they're engaged, if they're still with you, or if you've started to lose them. This presenter was not engaging with us. He was looking at his computer, or he was looking up at the screen. He was not looking at us at all. He had no clue if we were still with him or not. And the weird thing about that is, like, I actually was finding it interesting until he said that. And then he just lost so much credibility with me just by throwing out that comment, because it showed he did not know what he was doing as a presenter. So while on the whole, I did love this this conference, and I did learn a lot. It did make me wonder about the process of getting speakers, even though, like I said, I got to be a speaker and I had a great time. And yeah, but the presentations that I saw given by women, I mean, you saw that all of the ones that I shouted out as the most impressive, that presentations that I saw were all by women. They were very well organized. They were well thought out. They kept me engaged the whole time. They provided awesome information as well as actionable tips. I think everyone I listed here was like, here's an actionable tip that you can take home and implement right now. It was so well done. So again, I don't know why that is. That was just my observation. And I did hear some really awesome presentations. I heard of awesome presentations given by men that I did not get to see, and I wish I had made it to. But I heard from other people that they were really good. So that's what I have to say about the Seattle Interactive Conference. It was awesome. It was so much fun. I had a blast. It was my first time ever in Washington, much less in Seattle. So definitely looking forward to going back there and getting some more speaking opportunities. So if you have any questions, you know where to find me. My website is over at AV, as in my initials, Allison Verhalen. It is AV writing services. And if you want to ask me anything directly, you can reach out. My email is info@avwritingservices.com. That's it. Have a great week and happy blogging, everyone.